Hello viewers, and thank you once again for tuning in to our show today. My name is Chef Andy, and today we are going to be making something really vibrant. We're going to be making some Malabari prawns, and this is a very simple recipe, actually among the many recipes I managed to obtain while I was on my visit to India, and I bet some of you are actually going to enjoy what we're going to be doing today. But before we get there, we're going to proceed by introducing the ingredients before us, to give you a broad understanding of what to expect for this show. So from the very front, I've got some lime leaves. I've also got a bowl there with some coriander, cumin, and cardamom seeds. I'm also going to be using a tablespoon of unsalted butter, a pinch of black pepper powder, and a teaspoon of salt. You also will require about a teaspoon of cumin powder, a teaspoon of paprika powder, and a root of ginger, about 25 grams. You'll also require about 3 to 4 cloves of garlic, 1 small red onion, and 1 whole lemon. You'll also require some cayenne pepper, some fresh coriander leaves, some coconut cream, some prawns, about 10 to 12 pieces, and of course some oil to cook with. We are going to allow you for this chance to freshen up and grab your pens and papers if you're taking notes, and we'll see you after a very, very short while. See you in a little bit. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just catching up, we're about ready to start this very, very simple Malabari prawns dish. And very, very fastly, I'm going to be showing you also how to clean your own prawns. For some of you who may always alternate your love for whole prawns and buy the cleaned ones because you may not know how to clean them, then definitely this is your chance to brace yourselves and get learning. So very, very simply, the first step of cleaning prawns is to shell the heads. So it's a very, very simple technique. All you're going to do is begin by turning the heads sideways or twisting very gently and pulling, and proceed to separate the heads from the tails. Now I'm going to be using some queen prawns for this recipe. You are not limited to using just these. Remember, there's about 4 or 5 other different sizes out there. So do speak to your fishmonger and they will probably have a better understanding or a better know-how of what to recommend to you. So just proceed to remove the heads completely. Remember, this is the first of the cleaning process. Now remember, for some of you who may not also know about prawns, remember these are considered the roaches of the sea. Remember, they actually are bottom feeders. So these are particularly fish that feed off they feed off the remains of other fish. So you may actually find it that they may look revolting, but remember, they actually are very, very tasty if they're prepared and done the right way. Right, so heads off. Proceed to drain your bowl very quickly. Now once that is done, we're going to proceed to shell our prawns. So very, very simply, right between the legs, proceed to just pull that very, very thin membrane apart, and proceed to twist right around, right up until you manage to almost peel the shell of the prawn off completely. Now proceed to do so. Of course, always making sure to leave your tail attached, and proceed to set those aside. And you can also proceed to discard the shells at this stage. So once more, proceed to pull the membranes. Actually, they have a bit of segment to them, so it's very easy to actually peel them little by little. And remember, these are they're very, very fragile, so you may want to be very, very gentle while doing so. So one particular thing I may want to share as well, I've also had some bad experiences ordering prawns when I eat out. There are situations where you do find that your prawns are not probably veined very, very well, and it actually becomes a very, very bitter and unpleasant taste, and it also gives more like a bad smell if you cook them with the veins in there. So we are also going to be removing the veins for those of you who are still paying attention. Proceed to clean them all the way to the very last piece. Now, as you get towards the last and the final piece, you will also begin to also prepare a chopping board where you'll be cleaning and veining your prawns. So we're going to do that just after this last and final piece. Alright, so simple as that. So shells off, heads off, and we're going to reserve the heads very, very simply for the garnish, and proceed to discard the shells. Also be very vigilant to keep your hands very clean when working with shellfish. Remember, it is also very important to mention that they do actually have quite a bit of allergens, and people, there's actually quite a bit of people who have allergies to prawns. So be very, very sure to make sure that if you're going to be making prawns for any of your guests, always do take time and find out and make sure that they're actually able to eat shellfish and that they don't have any allergic reaction, because it could actually be fatal, and it's something that most of you should always remember. So something to pay attention to. If you're working with shellfish, be sure to always mention it to your guests that your dish contains shellfish, or you worked with shellfish while preparing any of the dishes around it, just to make sure that you're on the safe side. Right, so very simply, we're going to start veining our prawn. So it's a very, very simple technique. Begin by placing your prawn lengthways on your board, and right over the top, you should actually be able to see a dark line stripping right through the tail. And it's a very, very simple thing to do. Just cut along that line, making a very small, thin incision. Proceed to open up very gently, and using your knife, proceed to lift that gland off completely. And be sure to get to the very end of the tail. And once that is done, you can actually always have a bit of a kitchen towel handy. I particularly like to use this because it does allow for you to make sure that the vein is out completely. So once the vein is out, proceed to do the same thing for the rest of your pieces. Always, of course, making sure to cut right through to the very end, but not right through the piece itself. And just proceed to do the same for all your pieces. Of course, always taking time to make sure not to leave any of the veins in, because as I mentioned, one small mistake such as that could completely ruin the taste of your dish. And it will also affect the aromas coming from your dish. Something also to share, you can actually cook your prawns with the tails on or off. It doesn't really make much difference. But for particular reasons such as plating and garnish, and also for presentation, I will always recommend to leave your tails on, because it also allows for your prawn to cook nice and evenly. Also allows for it to hold its shape quite nicely once fully cooked, and avoids for it to curl up completely, making it much smaller in appearance. So this particular process can also be referred to as butterflying your prawns, and that would be whereby you would cut a little much deeper into the flesh of your prawn and cook it with the piece opened up completely, which I'll be able to show you in a little bit. Now just to proceed to finish off cleaning our prawns. And just by getting a view there from the camera, you should actually be able to get that view of all that horrible material that you should be wary of getting rid of. And remember, for those of you who may occasionally eat out and have prawns, remember, if you're having a foul, fumy kind of smell coming from your plate, you will now actually be able to tell where that smell comes from once you detect it. So just to finish off the last and final pieces. Proceed to do the same, making sure to check and inspect each piece. Now as we come to the last and final stage of the veining step of the prawns, if you're just catching up, what I'm doing right now is removing the vein from the prawn tails. And remember, this would be the valve that carries the waste all the way from the head all the way to the exit part, if I can call it that way. And it's very, very important to mention that forgetting to remove this will actually taint the taste of your prawns. It may actually give a horrible smell, and it's something that you may not enjoy. So as I mentioned, as you can see from the piece of kitchen towel there, it's quite a revolting looking piece of waste, but very, very importantly, always make sure to discard this completely and to always keep them as far away from the prawns that you're going to be cooking, because remember, they will actually carry that smell right through. So I'm going to start this very, very simple process of making the curry, and we're going to proceed to just move this to a bowl on the side. Make sure to rinse your hands once more. And very importantly, always be sure to turn your board around. This is just to make sure that you don't actually carry on any poisons or any juices from the fish that may actually give quite an allergic reaction or carry the smell right through to all your ingredients. So just be sure to give your board a wipe, making sure it's completely dry before cutting anything on it. Remember, that also may actually cause you to slip and cut yourself, so always be sure to work on a very dry working surface. So to begin our process, I'm going to begin by heating up our pan. And very, very simply, we're going to begin by chopping up our ginger roots. So proceed by cutting those into some long, rough strips. And proceed to go over your ginger with a sharp knife until you've got some nice, even, small sizes. Once almost chopped through, proceed to add your cloves of garlic. I'm going to be using about 5 cloves. So first begin by pounding them down. This will always make it a little easier for you to chop. And proceed to chop first very, very coarsely. Proceed to mix with the ginger. And once more proceed to chop finely, or as fine as you possibly can. This should take you anywhere between 4 to 5 minutes, so it's very handy that you take your time to do so. Otherwise, you will have some nice big chunks of garlic or ginger in there that are always unpleasant to bite into. And remember, for those who may want to throw this in a pestle and mortar, also works very finely. And it will also save you quite a bit of time and energy. So just to finish that off, so once your garlic and ginger is evenly chopped, you will proceed to return your attention back to your hot pan. And very, very importantly, always good to activate your spices. So in a very dry pan with no oil, Proceed to add your cardamom seeds, your mustard seeds, your aniseed and your cardamom, and just toss them on a pan, allowing them to roast very fragrantly, and this will allow for you to actually release the aromas very simply. Now you may want to proceed to do so right up until you get the nice beautiful aroma coming through. But of course be mindful to make sure as well that they don't actually burn, because they will actually carry that taste right through. Alright, so once you actually start to hear them almost toast and start to pop off the surface of your hot pan, proceed to just pour those onto your working surface. Return your pan to the heat and begin to add some cooking oil. Now next up, we're going to begin by adding our garlic and ginger. Remember, these are our aromatics. Using a spoon, proceed to mix everything together and proceed to fry until you've got a nice beautiful golden color and you've got all the beautiful aromas coming through. And of course, something else to also mention, remember prawns do cook quite quickly on heat. So you may actually want to add those right after you've made your curry sauce, because they will actually absorb the flavors and cook a little faster and a little easier. And it will also avoid for you to overcook them. So remember, if you actually throw the prawns in the beginning part of your cooking, they will become very rubbery and they will become very chewy and very unpleasant. Right, so once your garlic and ginger is beautifully golden, proceed to return your toasted spices onto the pan. Add again a little bit of oil and proceed to very quickly slice up your red onion. And now proceed to add that to your pan and begin to toast together. And at this stage, you can actually add a little bit of water to cool down your pan. And now while that continues, you will proceed to add your paprika powder, your cumin powder, and a small pinch of your cayenne pepper. Using a spoon, proceed to mix through. And at this stage, you can proceed to add your coconut cream. And now proceed to turn off your heat completely and mix through. Alright, so your curry base is now about ready. So we're going to allow that to sit on the side and just allow for a few minutes for the ingredients to really combine. And on a separate pan, you'll begin to heat it up real quickly. And to it, we're going to be frying up our prawn heads. So a very particularly beautiful technique of making use of the heads. always a bit nicer to actually serve them with the prawns. Remember, they're actually nice and succulent when you suck into them. So this is a very simple way of making sure to not waste your prawn heads. Proceed by chopping a small clove of garlic. Remember, this will just aid in flavoring your oil a little bit. And all you need to do at this stage is add your heads to the oil, to the pan, and just proceed to fry very quickly at high heat, seasoning lightly with a bit of salt. And proceed to fry in the garlic, and proceed to add about half a teaspoon of butter. Remember, as I mentioned, this actually carry quite a nice beautiful flavor once cooked nicely, and you can also serve this right on the side of your prawn curry. And remember, it also elevates it, it also gives it a nice beautiful finish, and also brings a nice beautiful authenticity to plating. So the heads are now cooking nice, and you can actually be able to get those beautiful flavors. Now to that, to just give them a bit of color and flavor, we're going to add some freshly chopped coriander leaves. You can proceed to toss once more. Remember, you should actually be able to tell when these are done right up until you get a nice beautiful toasted reddish finish to the sides. And at this stage you can actually deglaze with some lemon. So I'm just going to slice a wedge of lemon off the side, and you can proceed to squeeze that over the prawn heads and proceed to toss through, allowing for your lemon juice to mix. And once that is done, you can proceed to set those aside, and you can come back to them when you get to your plating. So we've gotten to the base of our curry, and we've also got our prawns done. But we are going to get this dish done by adding our prawns lastly, which you're going to be seeing in a little bit. But before we get that far, we are going to allow you to stretch, unwind, and just get that tension off your backs. And we will see you in a very short while. See you in a little bit. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are with us just before we took the break, we were just working on our beautiful curry sauce. We also fried up our heads, and we're right about ready to start finishing off the last bit. So we'll start this off by adding our raw prawns into the cooked curry sauce. Be sure to toss that a few times in the sauce, making sure they're completely submerged. And remember, as I mentioned, prawns will, especially in sauce that is already hot and cooking, they should be able to cook in there for anywhere between 6 to 8 minutes, just giving you enough time to add the rest of your ingredients to your curry. And for that, we'll incorporate a few pieces of some kaffir lime leaves. Now these are particularly available at your Oriental stores, so you should actually be able to get your hands on some. Also proceed to season with some salt. a bit of some black pepper powder. Mix that through. Once more, spread out your pieces of prawn in your pan, giving them enough room to be able to cook fully. And now proceed to add your coriander leaves. So this you will just proceed to chop finely on your board. About a teaspoon should be okay for this particular, at this particular point rather. Mix that through once more. And at this stage, we're also going to add a few of the heads that we prepared earlier, leaving off just about 5 pieces which we'll be using for our garnish. Now proceed to mix that through. And proceed to continue to mix through until the liquid is reduced. You will also be able to note that your prawns will actually start to curl up. That will be a very first sign of them being fully cooked. But very handy to always add to any particular seafood a bit of lemon. So I'm just going to start by proceed to slice some nice thick wedges off the sides of my lemon piece. And we'll just proceed to place those on our plate like so. And for the rest of your lemon, you're just going to proceed to grab a sieve and squeeze that right over your curry mixture. Remember, lime or lemon juice will always give a nice, beautiful, uplifting relief to your dish. You may not be able to taste the zest in it, but it will actually bring out all the other flavors that are in your pan really, really nicely. And you can now turn off your heat completely and mix through as you come to the last and final stage of your plating. Now very simply proceed to grab a piece of tongs, and we're going to start off plating very gently by moving our prawn pieces onto the plate. So I'm just going to start with the tails. And remember, tongs are always very handy when plating. Remember, they also allow for you to have quite a clean work ethic, especially when it comes to plating of your dish. So I'm just going to spread those right on that spot on the big plate. Also proceed to add your prawn heads over the sides. Of course, always looking for nice, beautiful symmetry while you plate. Always nice and handy to play around with most of the empty spaces on your plate. Now proceed to add your tails over once more, giving it a bit of height. And always very important, be sure to always proceed to plate once you're very certain that your food is fully cooked. And as I'd mentioned earlier, queen prawns, especially ones that have been defrosted and cleaned, will cook a little faster out of the shell than in the shell. And one particularly common characteristic of noting when they're done, they'll always actually start to curl up into little question mark kind of shapes. Now just coming to the last and final pieces on our plate. See to just spread your heads around as we mentioned earlier. Ensure also to make sure to remove all the pieces of fish from your pan. And keep plating while giving your plate a bit of height. And once that's done, proceed to spoon over your curry sauce, giving it a mix to make sure to have all the fish pieces completely removed. And all you need to do now is proceed to spoon your curry sauce to one side of your plate and just allow it to pour very, very lightly onto the side. And just to finish that off, just to find some nice pieces of heads there, you can proceed to garnish that right over the top. And your Malabari Prawn Curry is as simple as that. I hope you've managed to have some fun on the show today, and I hope you've actually managed to also pick up something new, something you can try in your own kitchens, and something you can use to improve the techniques that you already knew before this particular show. And I hope you'll also try it at home and send us your comments, feedbacks on our Facebook page. We're always more than happy to hear from you. But from the studios, it's me, Chef Andy, bidding you farewell, and until the next episode, see you soon and God bless.